4 dimensions of service management. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to list the 4 dimensions of service management, describe the factors that influence an organization's strategy, outline the benefits of value streams and processes. Let's look at the dimensions of service management. To support a holistic approach to service management, ITIL defines 4 dimensions of service management that collectively are critical to the effective and efficient facilitation of value for customers and other stakeholders in the form of products and services. These are organizations and people, information and technology, partners and suppliers, value streams, and processes. None of these are sufficient to produce the required outcome when considered in isolation. These 4 dimensions represent perspective which are relevant to the whole service value system, or SVS, and all IT services being managed, including the entirety of the service value chain and all practices. The 4 dimensions are constrained or influenced by several external factors that are often beyond the control of the SVS. Failing to address all 4 dimensions properly may result in services becoming undeliverable or not meeting expectations of quality or efficiency. The 4 dimensions do not have sharp boundaries and may overlap. They will sometimes interact in unpredictable ways, depending on the level of complexity and uncertainty in which an organization operates. Now let's look at organizations and people. The first dimension of service management is organizations and people. The organization and people dimension of a service covers roles and responsibilities, formal organizational structures, culture, and required staffing and competencies, all of which are related to the creation, delivery, and improvement of a service. When looking at this dimension in relation to the SVS, the focus should be on the same aspects, but in the context of the organization acting as a service provider. The complexity of organizations is growing, and it is important to ensure that the way an organization is structured and managed, as well as its roles, responsibilities, and systems of authority and communication, is well defined and supports its overall strategy and operating model. The organization also needs a culture that supports its objectives and the right level of capacity and competency among its workforce. The effectiveness of an organization cannot be assured by a formally established structure or system of authority alone. It is vital that the leaders of the organization champion and advocate values which motivate people to work in desirable ways. Ultimately, however, it is the way in which an organization carries out its work that creates shared values and attitudes, which over time are considered to be the organization's culture. It is useful to promote a culture of trust and transparency in an organization that encourages its members to raise and escalate issues and facilitate communication before any issues have an impact on customers. Adopting the ITIL guiding principles can be a good starting point for establishing a healthy organizational culture. People, be it customers, employees of suppliers, employees of the service provider, or any other stakeholder in the service relationship, are a key element in this dimension. Organizations need people who pay attention not only to the skills and competencies of teams or individual members, but also to management and leadership styles, have good communication and collaboration skills, update their skills and competencies over a period of time, understand the interfaces between their specializations and roles and those of others in the organization, have proper levels of collaboration and coordination among people, have a broad general knowledge of the other areas of the organization, combined with a deep specialization in certain fields. Let's move on to the next dimension, information and technology. The second dimension of service management is information and technology. As with the other 3 dimensions, information and technology applies both to service management and to the services being managed. When applied to the service value system, the information and technology dimension includes the information and knowledge necessary for the management of services, as well as the technologies required. It also incorporates the relationships between different components of the SVS, such as the inputs and outputs of activities and practices. The technologies that support service management include, but are not limited to, workflow management systems, knowledge bases, inventory systems, communication systems, and analytical tools. Service management increasingly benefits from technology development with newer technologies, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other cognitive computing solutions. They are used at all levels, from strategic planning and portfolio optimization to system monitoring and user support. The use of mobile platforms, cloud solutions, remote collaboration tools, automated testing, and deployment solutions has become a common practice among service providers. In the context of a specific IT service, this dimension includes the information created, managed, and used in the course of service provision and consumption, and the technologies that support and enable that service. The specific information and technologies depend on the nature of the services being provided and usually cover all levels of IT architecture, including applications, databases, communication systems, and their integrations. In many areas, IT services utilize the latest technology developments, such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and cognitive computing. These services provide a business differentiation potential to early adopters, especially in highly competitive industries. Other technology solutions, such as cloud computing or mobile apps, have become a common practice across many industries globally. For many services, information management is the primary means of delivering customer value. Information is generally the key output of the majority of IT services which are consumed by business customers. Another key consideration in this dimension is the way information is exchanged between different services and service components. The information architecture of various services should be well understood and continually optimized, considering such criteria as the availability, reliability, accessibility, timeliness, accuracy, and relevance of the information provided to users and exchanged between services. The challenges of information management, such as those presented by security and regulatory compliance requirements, are also a focus of this dimension. Let us look at some of the regulations of information and technology. Organizations must consider how information is exchanged between different services and service components. For example, an organization may be subject to the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which influences its information management policies and practices. Other industries or countries may have regulations that impose constraints on the collection and management of data of multinational corporations. For example, in the United States, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 provides data privacy and security provisions for safeguarding medical information collected in the U.S. Let's look at how to select the right technology. Most services nowadays are based on information technology and are heavily dependent on it. When considering a technology for use in the planning, design, transition, or operation of a product or service, questions that an organization can ask may include: is this technology compatible with the current architecture of the organization and its customers? Does this technology raise any regulatory or other compliance issues with the organization's policies and information security controls or those of its customers? Is this a technology that will continue to be viable in the foreseeable future? Is the organization willing to accept the risk of using aging technology or of embracing emerging or unproven technology? Does this technology align with the strategy of the service provider or its service consumers? Does the organization have the right skills across its staff and suppliers to support and maintain the technology? Does this technology have sufficient automation capabilities to ensure it can be efficiently developed, deployed, and operated? Does this technology offer additional capabilities that might be leveraged for other products or services? Does this technology introduce new risks or constraints to the organization? Let's look at the factors influencing technology. The culture of an organization may have a significant impact on the technologies it chooses to use. Some organizations will have more of an interest in being on the cutting edge of technological advances than others. Equally, the culture of some organizations may be focused on a more traditional way of working. One company may be excited to take advantage of artificial intelligence technologies, while another may barely be ready for advanced data analysis tools. The nature of the business will also affect the technology it makes use of. For example, a company that does significant business with government clients may have restrictions on the use of some technologies, or have significantly higher security concerns that must be addressed. Other industries, such as finance or life sciences, are also subject to restrictions around their use of technology. For example, they usually cannot use open source and public services when dealing with sensitive data. Let's move on to our next topic, cloud computing. Cloud computing is a model for enabling on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources that can be rapidly provided with minimal management effort or provider interaction. ITSM has been focusing on value for users and customers for years, and this focus is usually technology agnostic. What matters is not the technology, but the opportunities it creates for the customers. Although for the most part, this is a perfectly acceptable approach, organizations cannot ignore new architectural solutions and the evolution of technology in general. Cloud computing has become an architectural shift in IT, introducing new opportunities and risks, and organizations have reacted to it in ways that are most beneficial for themselves, their customers, and other stakeholders. Key characteristics of cloud computing include on-demand availability, often self-service; network access, often internet access; resource pooling, often among multiple organizations; rapid elasticity, often automatic; measured service, often from service consumers' perspective. Now let us learn about partners and suppliers. The third dimension of service management is partners and suppliers. Every organization and service depends on services provided by other organizations to some extent. The partners and suppliers dimension encompasses an organization's relationships with other organizations that are involved in the design, development, deployment, delivery, support, and continual improvement of services. It also incorporates contracts and other agreements between the organization and its partners or suppliers. A method an organization may use to address the partners and suppliers dimension is service integration and management. This involves the use of a specially established integrator to ensure that service relationships are properly coordinated. Service integration and management may be kept within the organization, but can also be delegated to a trusted partner. Relationships between organizations may involve various levels of integration and formality. This ranges from formal contracts with clear separation of responsibilities to flexible partnerships where parties share common goals and risks and collaborate to achieve desired outcomes. Note that the forms of cooperation described in the given table are not fixed and distinctive, but exist as a scale. An organization acting as a service provider will have a position on this scale, which will vary depending on the strategy and objectives for customer relationships. Likewise, when an organization acts as a service consumer, the role it takes on will depend on its strategy and objectives for sourcing and supplier management. Let us look at organization strategy. An organization's strategy when it comes to choosing partners and suppliers should be based on its goals, culture, and business environment. For example, some organizations may believe that they will be best served by focusing their attention on developing certain core competencies, using partners and suppliers to provide other needs. Other organizations may choose to rely as much as possible on their own resources, using partners and suppliers as little as possible. There are, of course, many variations between these two opposite approaches. Factors that may influence an organization's strategy when using suppliers include strategic focus. Some organizations may prefer to focus on their core competence and to outsource non-core supporting functions to third parties. Others may prefer to stay as self-sufficient as possible, retaining full control over all important functions. Corporate culture. Some organizations have a historical preference for one approach over another. Long-standing cultural bias is difficult to change without compelling reasons. Resource scarcity. If a required resource or skill set is in short supply, it may be difficult for the service provider to acquire what is needed without engaging a supplier. Cost concerns. A decision may be influenced by the service provider's belief that it can source a particular requirement more economically from a supplier. Subject matter expertise. The service provider may believe that it is less risky to use a supplier that already has expertise in a required area, rather than trying to develop and maintain the subject matter expertise in-house. External constraints. Government regulation or policy, industry codes of conduct, and social, political, or legal constraints might impact an organization's supplier strategy. Demand patterns. Customer activity or demand for services might be seasonal or demonstrate high degrees of variability. These patterns may impact the extent to which organizations use external service providers to cope with variable demand. Let us look at value streams and processes. The fourth dimension of service management is value streams and processes. Like the other dimensions, this dimension is applicable to both the service value systems in general and to specific products and services. In both contexts, it defines the activities, workflows, controls, and procedures needed to achieve the agreed objectives. Applied to the organization and its service value systems, the value streams and processes dimension is concerned with how the various parts of the organization work in an integrated and coordinated way to enable value creation through products and services. It also focuses on what activities the organization undertakes, how they are organized, as well as how the organization ensures that it is enabling value creation for all stakeholders efficiently and effectively. A value stream is a series of steps that an organization uses to create and deliver products and services to a service consumer. A value stream is a combination of the organization's value chain activities. Benefits of value streams. Identifying and understanding the various value streams that an organization has is critical to improving its overall performance. Value stream helps to have a clear picture of what it delivers and how, and to make continual improvements to its services. Organizations can map their work with the identified value stream map. This would enable them to analyze their current state and identify any barriers to workflow and non-value adding activities, for example, waste. Opportunities to increase value-adding activities can be found across the service value chain. These may be new activities or modifications to existing ones, which can make the organization more productive. Value stream optimization may include process automation or adopting of emerging technologies and ways of work to gain efficiencies or enhance user experience. Depending on the organization's strategy, value streams can be redefined to react to changing demand and other circumstances, or remain stable for a significant amount of time. Now let us learn about processes. A process is a set of interrelated or interacting activities that transform inputs into outputs. Processes define the sequence of activities and their dependencies. Processes describe what needs to be done in order to accomplish an objective, and a well-defined process can improve productivity within and across organizations. They are usually detailed in procedures, which outline who is involved in the process, and work instructions, which explain how they are carried out. An organization should answer the following questions to successfully create, deliver, and improve a service. What is the generic delivery model for the service, and how does the service work? What are the value streams involved in delivering the agreed outputs of the service? Who or what performs the required service actions? Specific answers to these questions will vary depending on the nature and architecture of the service. Let us look at some of the factors that affect service providers. Service providers do not operate in isolation. They are affected by many external factors and work in dynamic and complex environments that can exhibit high degrees of volatility and uncertainty and impose constraints on how the service provider can work. In order to analyze these external factors, frameworks such as the PESTLE model are used. PESTLE is an acronym for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental, which represent the factors that constrain or influence how a service provider operates. Collectively, these factors influence how organizations configure their resources and address the four dimensions of service management. Political factors. These include laws, regulations, policies, bureaucracy, corruption, trade unions, and import or export restrictions. Political factors can also compromise laws around data protection, consumer protection, copyright, patent, and intellectual property. Economic factors. These include consumer income and disposable income, monetary and fiscal policies, especially in countries where the government has limited involvement in central bank functions, stock market trends, interest rates, economic growth, and labor costs. Social factors. These include consumer lifestyles and buying habits, attitudes and expectations of product and service quality, and social makeup. For example, family size or structure, social classes, or age distribution. Technological factors. These include considerations around available private and public infrastructure, from roads and public utilities to communications infrastructure. Rate of technology change. Level of technology adoption, especially in the context of the organization's industry and competition. Internet penetration and adoption of smartphones. Legal factors. These include laws around antitrust, copyright, consumer protection, employment, health and safety, and data protection. Environmental factors. These include weather, climate change, pollution, and laws designed to regulate or tackle pollution and waste management. Attitudes from businesses and consumers toward renewable energy and environmentally friendly products and services. Here are the key takeaways. The 4 dimensions of service management are organizations and people, information and technology, partners and suppliers, and value streams and processes. The information and technology dimension includes the information and knowledge necessary for the management of services and the technologies required. The partners and suppliers dimension encompasses an organization's relationships with other organizations that are involved in the design, development, deployment, delivery, support, and continual improvement of services. Services are affected by many external factors that exhibit high degrees of volatility and uncertainty and impose constraints on how they work.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.